Judith had been acting strange lately, and by acting strange, I don't mean anything dramatic like sneaking out at night wearing sunglasses and a trench coat. No, it was more subtle than that. The kind of change that creeps up on you, like realizing too late that your favorite jeans don't fit anymore, even though you swear you haven't gained a pound. She had developed a habit, a brand new, out of nowhere, completely out of character habit of humming. Judith was not a hummer. In the entire 10 years I had known her, the only noise she ever made while doing mundane things was sighing heavily whenever I left a cabinet door open. But now? Now she hummed. Constantly. In the kitchen. In the bathroom. While folding laundry. At first, I thought, okay, maybe she's just in a good mood. Which would have been nice, considering she spent the last year looking at me the way people look at a wet sock in the middle of the living room floor. But this wasn't a normal good mood. This was the humming of someone who had won the lottery but wasn't allowed to tell anyone about it. The humming was just the beginning. Then came the new words in her vocabulary. Now, Judith is, or was, a very practical woman. A nurse, sharp as a scalpel, never one to sugarcoat anything. She didn't use words like magic, or soulful, or breathtaking. Those words belonged to greeting cards and people who took too many yoga classes. But suddenly, they were everywhere. Ethan, you just don't understand the magic of it all. It was a soulful experience. God, it was breathtaking. Breathtaking. She used that exact word last week while describing a sandwich. A sandwich. I had never heard her describe anything in our marriage as breathtaking. Not our wedding. Not our first home. Not even that time I fixed the sink without calling a plumber, which, frankly, should have made me a national hero. So now, I had a humming, poetry-spouting wife, and if that wasn't unsettling enough, there was the matter of the Tuesdays. Every Tuesday evening, Judith had an art class. That's right, art. My wife, who once called a Monet painting kind of blurry, had suddenly developed a passion for the fine arts. Ethan, I need something for myself, she told me when she first signed up. Something creative. Something fulfilling. Sure. Because nothing says creative and fulfilling like the woman who once glued her fingers together trying to fix a broken mug. I tried to be supportive. I really did. But then I made the mistake of asking to see her work. Oh, it's not really about what I create, she said, waving me off like I was some poor, clueless peasant who didn't understand the depths of artistic expression. It's about the process. The journey. The journey. Not suspicious at all. It was around this time that I started getting the feeling, the quiet, nagging, stomach-churning feeling that something was very, very wrong. I didn't want to be that guy. The paranoid husband. The jealous fool. The guy who follows his wife around like a detective in an old North film. But then, Judith did something that shattered any remaining hope I had that this was all just in my head. She bought a new rug. I know, stay with me here. Our house had the same rug for years. A dull, beige thing that neither of us liked but were too lazy to replace. Then one day, out of the blue, Judith came home with a red rug. Not just any red, deep, bold, dramatic red. Like something you'd see in a theater or a luxury penthouse. The kind of rug that whispered, exciting things happen here. I stared at it for a long time, then at Judith, who was standing there, hands on her hips, surveying her purchase like an artist admiring a masterpiece. It just felt right, she said. I looked at her. What exactly feels right about this? Are we summoning demons now? Because this looks like a place where sacrifices happen. She rolled her eyes. Ethan, it's passionate. It's alive. It's something our house was missing. Alive? Missing? This was a rug, not a therapy session. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about the rug. The rug was just another symptom. A symptom of something bigger, something I wasn't seeing yet but could feel in my bones. That night, I lay in bed next to Judith, staring at the ceiling, the glow from the hallway light stretching across the room in eerie streaks. She was already asleep, her breathing slow and steady. I turned my head to look at her, really look at her. She looked happy, peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't seen on her face in years. The worst part? I knew I wasn't the reason for it. And that's when the real fun began. It all started making sense on a Wednesday. Not because I discovered anything obvious, but because Judith forgot to be careful. See, when someone is up to something, they tend to overcompensate. They become too nice, too considerate, too interested in your well-being all of a sudden. And Judith had been running that game for months. Asking me about my day when she never cared before, giving me extra long hugs like I had just returned from war, complimenting my style, when I've been wearing the same 5 shirts in rotation for years. It was cute, in a way, watching her try to act normal while clearly panicking inside. But Wednesday? That was her mistake. She forgot to fake it. It was 7:15 in the morning, and Judith was in the kitchen, staring blankly at her phone while holding a mug of coffee she had clearly forgotten to drink. I walked in, sat down, and waited. Normally, this would be the moment where she'd snap out of it, flash me a smile, and ask something forced like, "Did you sleep well?" But this time, nothing. She was in another world, eyes locked on whatever was on that screen. Her fingers hovered above it, hesitating, like she was debating whether to respond to something. I waited another 30 seconds, just out of curiosity, and still nothing. Now, if you've been married long enough, you know the little signals. The way a person's face changes when they're texting their boss versus their best friend versus, let's say, someone they're secretly seeing on the side. And Judith? She looked like a teenager hiding messages from her parents. I leaned back in my chair, watching the deep-thinking philosopher version of my wife, and finally decided to break the silence. "So, what's on your mind?" She flinched. A full body, somebody just broke into the house flinch. Then, she quickly locked her phone and forced a smile. "Oh, nothing. Just checking work messages." "Sure. Work messages that make you look like you're on trial for murder." I took a sip of my coffee, nodding. "Work's keeping you busy, huh?" She exhaled, like she had just successfully defused a bomb. "Yeah, crazy week." And just like that, the conversation was over. But the problem with lying too much is that it starts leaking out in all the wrong places. Because about 2 hours later, when I was on my laptop in the living room, Judith called out from the kitchen. "Ethan, do we still have duct tape?" Now, that's not a normal sentence to hear at 9:30 a.m. from your wife who, as far as I knew, had no scheduled home improvement projects. I frowned. Why do you need duct tape?" Silence. Then, too much enthusiasm. "Oh, just something at work. Nothing important. Nothing important that requires duct tape." There was a drawer in the kitchen with all the random stuff, scissors, batteries, that one screwdriver nobody ever puts back in the toolbox. She yanked it open, rummaged through it, then closed it a little too hard when she didn't find what she was looking for. Now, I had two choices here. I could ask. I could press the issue and get some terrible, half-baked excuse about how hospitals sometimes need emergency duct tape. Or I could do what I did best, pretend to let it go and pay attention. So I leaned back in my chair and did exactly that. Judith left the house at exactly 9:42 a.m. That was unusual. She normally left earlier. And more importantly, she didn't take her usual work bag. Just grabbed her phone, her keys, and left. Interesting. Now, let's get one thing straight. I didn't have time to become one of those paranoid husbands who tracks his wife's every move. That's a full-time job, and quite frankly, I wasn't getting paid for it. But let's just say that when your wife suddenly develops a passion for duct tape and mysterious morning errands, it grabs your attention. I decided to run a simple test. I texted her at 10:15 a.m. "Hey, you left in a hurry. Everything okay?" No answer. "Fine." I waited another 20 minutes and sent another one. "Did you find the duct tape?" This time, she responded almost immediately. "Oh, yeah. Sorry, just busy. Talk later." Too fast. She saw my name pop up and hit me with damage control speed. Like someone caught in the middle of something who wants to end the conversation before it starts. I stared at the message. Thought about it. And then, out of pure curiosity, I called her. Straight to voicemail. Now, I don't know about you, but when someone texts you immediately yet somehow misses your call seconds later, that means they are very, very determined not to talk to you in real time. I set my phone down, took a deep breath, and finally, it clicked. She wasn't humming anymore. The weird, happy, lovesick humming that had been annoying me for weeks? Gone. You don't stop humming for no reason. Something had changed. Something had gone wrong. And suddenly, for the first time in months, I was interested. By Friday, I was officially done pretending everything was normal. Judith, on the other hand, was doing her best impression of a woman who had never told a lie in her life. She went through the motions: morning coffee, vague conversations about work, the occasional spontaneous back rub that felt about as natural as a politician kissing babies. It was admirable, really. If I didn't know any better, I'd almost believe she was just an average wife with an average life, and not someone who had just staged a full-scale duct tape crisis 2 days ago. I let her play her little game, smiled when she smiled, nodded when she rambled about the stress of her job. And then, when she wasn't looking, I did what any rational man would do in my situation. I went in the garage and checked if we actually had duct tape. Now, let me explain something. I'm not the type of guy who keeps an inventory of household supplies. If you asked me how many light bulbs we have right now, I'd have no clue. But duct tape? That's the kind of thing you buy once every 5 years and forget about until you desperately need it. So, imagine my shock when I found not one, not two, but 3 brand new rolls sitting on the shelf. 3. This meant one of 2 things. Judith had suffered a sudden, passionate obsession with adhesive solutions. The duct tape wasn't the point. I stood there for a long time, staring at those rolls, before calmly shutting the cabinet and walking back inside like nothing happened. Judith was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, way too focused for someone who claimed to be just checking emails. "Hey," I said casually. "Did you ever find the duct tape?" She froze for a split second. Then, her head snapped up so fast you'd think I had just accused her of international espionage. "What? The duct tape. The one you needed the other day." "Oh. Yeah. Yep. Found it." "Where?" Silence. Then, "At the store." I smiled. "Oh. Which store?" She blinked. The one by," and then, a move I had never seen before, she pretended to get a text. This was incredible. A historic performance. She actually tapped her screen to make it look like something had popped up and then frowned, like she had just received terrible news. "Ugh. Work," she sighed, standing up. "Sorry, I have to deal with this." And just like that, conversation over. I watched her leave the room, phone definitely not buzzing. Okay. So now, I had 3 undeniable facts. Judith was terrible at lying. She had never needed duct tape in the first place. Something big was going on. The problem was, I still didn't know what. And that was the part that kept me awake at night. That weekend, I decided to try something new. Instead of watching Judith like a hawk, I ignored her. I didn't ask where she was going. Didn't check the time when she left. Just let her do whatever she wanted. And you know what? That bothered her. On Saturday morning, she hovered in the doorway, waiting for me to ask where she was off to. I didn't. Instead, I pretended to be fully invested in scrolling through my phone. After a few seconds, she cleared her throat. "I'm heading out for a bit." I nodded. "Cool." She hesitated. "I'll be back later." "All right." Now, here's where it got interesting. She didn't leave. She stood there, waiting. Like she expected me to suddenly interrogate her. And when I didn't, panic. "Oh, do you need anything?" she tried. "Nope." "Okay. Well, I'll see you later." "Yep." And then she finally left, but not happily. That's when it hit me. She wanted me to ask. Because as long as I was suspicious, it meant I didn't know anything for sure. It meant she was still in control of the situation. But now? Now I had flipped the script, and suddenly, she didn't know what I was thinking. By Sunday, she was completely unraveling. She started doing weird things. Washing already clean dishes. Laughing at jokes that weren't funny. At one point, she actually offered to go grocery shopping, which historically was something she would rather break a bone than volunteer for. That's when I knew. She was hiding something. And whatever it was big enough to make her spiral. So, I did what any reasonable husband would do. I decided to stop waiting. It was time to find out the truth. The moment I knew, really knew, was when I found the calendar. Judith wasn't the type to keep a paper calendar. She lived in her phone, like a normal person, setting reminders for everything from doctor's appointments to buy more toothpaste, as if a full-grown adult could just forget that brushing their teeth requires supplies. But on Monday morning, I walked into the office and saw it, an actual, physical calendar pinned to the bulletin board. I stared at it for a long time, trying to process what I was seeing. It was one of those cheap promotional ones, probably grabbed from the bank or a pharmacy. Completely blank except for Tuesdays. Every Tuesday was marked with a little check mark. No notes. No times. Just check marks. I leaned in, scanning the last few months. Same pattern. Every Tuesday, without fail. And then, I saw next Tuesday. This one wasn't just a check mark. It had a time. 11:45 a.m. That was new. That was important. And that was when I knew I didn't have to guess anymore. I had a time. All I had to do was show up. Now, here's the thing. A lot of guys in my position would have gone straight for confrontation. Slammed the calendar down on the table, demanded answers, made a whole scene. But why would I do that when I could do something so much better? Judith wanted to play games? Fine. Let's play. For the next few days, I went into full performance mode. I was the perfect husband. I made dinner. Cleaned without being asked. Told her she looked nice. That one nearly made me choke, but I powered through. And the best part? I started humming. Oh yeah. Every time I passed her, I made sure to casually hum something upbeat. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to let her know that I was feeling good. Too good. And she hated it. By Thursday, she was twitchy. By Friday, she was watching me like I was the one hiding something. And then, on Tuesday morning, I made my move. I got dressed like it was any other day. Kissed her on the cheek. Told her I was heading out. And then, I followed her. Now, here's where things got interesting. I expected secrecy. A long drive, maybe some back alleys, something dramatic. But no. She went to the park. Just a regular park. Benches, trees, a walking path. Nothing shady. She parked the car, got out, and sat on a bench like she was waiting for a bus. I stayed back, watching. And then, he showed up. Mid-40s. Tall. Business casual, but trying too hard to look relaxed. The kind of guy who thinks rolling up his sleeves makes him look effortless instead of deeply calculated. They sat together. Close. They talked. They laughed. And then, Judith did something she hadn't done with me in months. She touched his arm. And just like that, I had my answer. Now, if this was some dramatic movie, this would be the part where I'd charge in, make a scene, throw some punches. But let's be honest, that's boring. Besides, why ruin my fun when I had a much better idea? I snapped a few photos. Nothing crazy. Just enough to set the stage. Then, I went home and started phase 1. Judith, bless her heart, had never been good with technology. She thought clearing her history was the same as deleting everything, which is why it took me exactly 15 minutes to go through her email and find his name. In his email. In his wife's email. Oh, this was beautiful. I spent the next 3 days setting the trap. Step 1. I made a fake email. Super simple. Something harmless. No real name attached. Just a little message sent to her guy's wife. Hey, I thought you should see this. And then, I attached the photos. Step 2. I waited. By Sunday, the results were spectacular. Judith was losing it. She was checking her phone every 5 minutes. Pacing. Jumping at every notification. The stress was eating her alive. And me? I was having the time of my life. Because I knew something she didn't. She thought she was ahead of the game. She had no idea that I was already winning. By Monday, Judith had entered full meltdown mode. She had been glued to her phone all morning, her face locked in that perfect expression of forced normalcy mixed with sheer panic. The kind of look people get when they hear a weird noise in their car, but pray it'll magically fix itself if they just ignore it long enough. I, of course, was very supportive. Everything all right? I asked sweetly, watching her nearly drop her phone. She blinked too fast. What? Oh. Yeah. Fine. Totally fine. Cool, I said, taking a sip of my coffee, which tasted especially good that morning. See, here's the thing. When someone knows they're caught, but they don't know exactly how much you know, they start spiraling. And Judith? She was spinning at full speed. By the time I got home from work, she had gone from nervous silence to theatrical irritation. Did you move my laptop? She demanded, arms crossed. I blinked at her. Nope. Why? She narrowed her eyes. I could have sworn it was on the table. Oh, I said, barely restraining a smirk. Maybe it got tired of all the art class searches and ran away. She didn't laugh, which was a shame, because I was hilarious. That night, I decided to give her a little push. As we sat on the couch, Judith half-heartedly scrolling through her phone while pretending not to be waiting for an incoming disaster, I sighed dramatically. You know, I was thinking, I said. She stiffened. About what? I stretched my arms, playing it casual. About how lucky I am to have such an honest, trustworthy wife. Judith froze. It was beautiful. For a moment, she didn't even breathe. Then, with all the grace of someone trying to pretend their house isn't on fire, she forced out a laugh. Thanks. I smiled. No secrets, no lies. Just pure, unshakable trust, right? She looked like she was about to be sick. But before she could recover, I leaned in and whispered the final nail in the coffin. By the way, how's your friend from the park? Silence. Judith's entire soul left her body. And that was the exact moment she realized she had lost. Now, a normal person might have folded at this point. They might have admitted the affair, thrown themselves on the mercy of the court, and hoped for a sliver of dignity. Judith? She went full nuclear. Because the thing about people like Judith is that when they lose control, they don't accept defeat. They destroy everything on their way down. And that's exactly what she tried to do. By Wednesday, I had a lawyer. By Thursday, I had a lawsuit. It was honestly impressive how fast she worked. Judith had somehow convinced herself that instead of being the one who got caught cheating, she was actually the tragic victim of a tough and heartless man. And oh, did she commit to the role? Suddenly, I had been neglecting her for years. Suddenly, I had been emotionally distant and cold. Suddenly, this was all my fault. And my favorite part? She wanted the house. Oh yeah, the house that I bought. With my money. Before we were even married. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the full list of demands Judith had managed to dream up. The house. Half of my savings. Monthly alimony. Some nonsense about emotional damages. I laughed. I laughed so hard I had to wipe tears from my eyes. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had probably seen every version of this circus before, simply raised an eyebrow. I take it you don't agree with her terms? Oh, no, I love them, I said. I especially like the part where she wants me to pay her for cheating on me. That's my favorite. The lawyer smirked. Good. Because we're about to make her regret ever stepping into a courtroom. And regret it she did. Because here's what Judith didn't expect. I had receipts. Not literal receipts, though those would have been hilarious, but evidence. Photos. Messages. Emails. Oh, and the cherry on top? Her boyfriend's wife had already filed for divorce. Turns out, she didn't appreciate the whole secret park rendezvous situation. Who would have thought? So now, Judith's brilliant plan to take me for everything I had? Yeah, not going great. The day of the court hearing, she finally snapped. As we sat across from each other in the conference room, waiting for the lawyers to sort out paperwork, Judith leaned in. You think this is funny? She hissed. I took a sip of my coffee. Oh, I know it is. Her face turned bright red. You ruined everything. I raised an eyebrow. Me? Oh no, sweetheart. You did that all by yourself. And that? That was the exact moment Judith realized she had already lost. The thing about people like Judith is that they only understand two things, control and consequences. She had spent years getting away with things, bending situations in her favor, twisting reality until it fit whatever story she needed to tell. But standing there, across from me in that sterile conference room, she finally ran out of ways to twist this one. She lost. And she knew it. Now, a reasonable person would have accepted reality and moved on. Judith? She decided to make a speech. You know, she said, voice shaking but still forcing that familiar self-righteous tone, I never thought you'd be this tough, Ethan. Tough. I repeated, setting down my coffee. That's a bold choice of words, considering the last few months. She ignored that. I don't know how you sleep at night, knowing you're doing this to me. That was the best part. She still thought she was the victim. Judith, I said, leaning back. You cheated. You lied. You tried to take everything from me. And now that it didn't work, you want me to feel bad. She crossed her arms. I was unhappy. I nodded. And instead of handling it like an adult, you decided to ruin your own life. That's on you. Her face twitched. That perfect, controlled expression she had kept up for months was finally starting to crack. And then, in the most predictable Judith move of all time, she tried one last desperate trick. You know, she said, voice low, we don't have to do this. We don't have to fight. We could just stop all of this. Go back. Fix things. I almost laughed. You think, I said slowly, that after everything you've done, I would ever take you back? Her jaw clenched. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I smiled. For you? No. But for me? It'd be the foolest decision of my life. And that was it. That was the moment Judith finally understood she was out of options. No more tricks. No more manipulation. No more controlling the situation. She had lost. And all that was left was acceptance. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. She got nothing. Not the house. Not my money. Not a single cent beyond what was legally required. And that wasn't even the best part. The best part was her boyfriend's wife. Because she took everything. And I do mean everything. That guy, the one Judith risked it all for? The one she thought would be her fresh start, her escape from her unhappy marriage with me? Yeah, she got to watch him crash and burn right alongside her. Because while Judith was busy trying to steal my house, his wife was taking their house. His money? Gone. His reputation? Ruined. And when it was all said and done, when the dust settled and Judith was finally free to be with her perfect man, he dumped her. I heard about it through mutual friends. Apparently, once he realized Judith had nothing to offer him anymore, he moved on to the next available option, which, honestly, was hilarious. I mean, you'd think someone as brilliant as Judith would have seen it coming. But nope. She really thought she won the lottery with that guy. Instead, she ended up completely alone. And me? I was fine. Better than fine, actually. Because while Judith was busy trying to put her life back together, I was already moving on. No baggage. No regrets. Just a clean slate and the satisfaction of knowing that, in the end, she got exactly what she deserved. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel